And I have to say, I feel like the parent who finds the child with the biscuit jar of chocolate all over his mouth, sitting there saying, it wasn't me. It's very, very difficult for us to believe any of the information that you've given us. I mean, what you've said is, in your attempt to clear up wrong data, is that you now know that there were 1 million breath tests carried out, despite the fact that previously said there were 2 million. But yet in the same breath you expect us to believe, and have stated repeatedly here, that there were 400,000 checkpoints carried out during that time. And I put it to you, Assistant Commissioner, how in God's name could that be possible? What that would in effect mean is that every checkpoint tested about 2.5 people, when you know that the guideline is a minimum of about 5 should be carried out in order to validate and make it worthwhile to even have the test checkpoint set up in the first place. So isn't it actually more credible that instead of having carried out 400,000 checkpoints, that in actual fact it's probably the case that there were only 200,000 checkpoints carried out? And if that is the case, which the figures would indicate, or seem to indicate, is it not the case that our entire road safety policy and everything that everybody who uses the road believes that the Garda are doing has been stood on its head?
Daly. Assistant Commissioner.
No indication to say that our checkpoint data is wrong. I've presented the data in relation to the breath test. I've verified that externally, and that's the data that I present.
It is likely and acceptable that for each of those mandatory testing checkpoints, they only carried out a testing on 2.5 people. 2.5 tests were carried out.
Obviously, depending where you go. If you're on the M50 motorway, you can test an awful lot of people. If I'm down in rural Ireland at night time... You've
been a serving officer. What would the norm be for a mandatory check? Are you saying when people go out, what's their guideline? Are they expected to carry out 2.5 tests, or what's the guideline? Is there a guideline? We're
doing our MAT checkpoints at the time when it's most likely to happen, then the least volume traffic are on the roads. We're not doing MAT checkpoints during the middle of the day.
On a MAT checkpoint for how many tests should be carried out at each checkpoint? Do Garda operate on a guideline for the number of MAT tests that should be carried out?
Yes, there were guidelines issued so that we would not be oppressive in terms of going out and holding up an entire array of traffic.
Tests per checkpoint, what is the figure?
Could maybe I answer? There is no number. No. The guideline is in relation to the checkpoint and the whole. But in terms of a number, a specific number, no is there. There is no target.
Your experiences of it, do you think it's productive that such a checkpoint would be carried out and only 2.5 tests conducted on that checkpoint?
Deputy Commissioner, and this is the last response. Deputy Daly. Oh, sorry, Commissioner, I beg your pardon.
No, it's okay.
Between you both.
The primary role of a MAT checkpoint is to no, but I think it's important.
You told us that earlier. Sorry, we're really pushed for time. You told us that earlier. Are you saying it's acceptable, or you believe it's credible, that there were 400,000 checkpoints, 1 million breath tests, meaning on average 2.5 tests per checkpoint? Does that seem productive use of resources? Does that seem credible to you within the guidelines? A yes or no is fine.
The majority of guards went out and they did a checkpoint. If they suspected somebody had alcohol,
answer the question. You think that's a good level of return?
They would breath test them. Not everybody's breath test is, because if we were, it would take us for.
I think the difficulty the public have is it's very hard to believe any of the
last word in relation to this.
I think it's important to focus on the outcome and the purpose of the MAT checkpoints. I'm not going to go into the whole detail, but the outcome is to reduce road deaths and serious and fatal collisions, and that is what we're achieving.
That's the answer. Unfortunately, and Deputy Colin Brophy.